We're alive.
We're back.
Indeed. How are you doing today, Angela?
Amazing. How are you doing, Michael?
I'm doing very well. Yeah, kicking off the week with success and getting into this material and just, yeah, excited about telemetry and metrics and everything. Yeah, happy to be here for the discussion.
Did you say you were happy about telemetry?
I
That
know, right?
There's no one ever, unless you're one of these case studies, because they seem very happy about telemetry.
Yes, indeed. Indeed. We'll get into that, but yeah, track all the things, right?
All the things, all the things. Uh, so we are on part 4.
This is part four already. Yeah, or yes,
And if you're
part
just
four feedback.
following along, this book is broken up into 5 or 6 different parts. So in lieu of reading like a chapter a week, we did it for you. We took it a chapter at a time, excuse me, a part at a time, which just so happens to have maybe 4 to 6 chapters in a part. So this is very intense. We have been going through it, making notes, and learning, to speak for myself, learning so much along the way.
Yes,
Learning so
indeed.
much. How
And
about you?
the crazy part is, as much as we learn, like the new stuff or just seeing someone else's view on these topics
Mhm.
that I've been applying, and perhaps you have as well throughout my career, it's like I'm seeing how close it is to reality. Like we're not reading fiction,
This is
we're this is not art imitating life. It's like life documented. You know what I mean?
Mhm. Book is a
So that
documentary.
yes, it's been so applicable in my day to day, or as I look back to things that have happened in the past and experience that they've shared. It's like, yeah, I know exactly what you were talking about. Yeah.
So for you, this is more day to day. For me, it is like drips and drabs. There are some parts that are very much more applicable to my current role. A lot of it's very applicable to former roles, so I can liken back to, the old Angela. And there's some of this stuff that is very new and relevant. That it's like, wow, it's eye opening for me to kind of understand how things work here and things like that, and to compare and contrast to how other people do things. So
Mhm.
a great learning experience, and I hope that folks who are following along and reading or listening, it's a learning experience for you too. I think that's very important.
Yes, indeed. And before we get into the discussion
Okay.
today, I did want to show an image that we shared in a previous episode for
Yes.
folks that are watching this live or perhaps on YouTube
Mhm.
later down the road. And for folks who are listening, I'm showing a diagram that shows the three ways of DevOps as explained by the authors of the DevOps Handbook. The first way is flow, and we talked about it. Work and task flowing from dev into ops, and the way that we use continuous integration and deployment and all that kind of stuff. And then today we're talking about the second way, which is feedback and how dev
Mhm.
and ops kind of cycle the work, the feedback from the system, and the customer and everybody else who has input a stake in having a service or operation, the software being deployed and live and accessible. And next time when we come back, we'll get into the third way, which is continual learning and experimentation. I just figured since we were sort of like in the middle here, the
Yes.
halfway point, it was a good time to just kind of reflect and like, what are these ways again? You know,
Yes.
because I always have to turn to this image to say like, okay, well, let me actually look at the words and the definition for the first way. Okay, the first way is flow. Second way is feedback, and third way is continual learning, and so on. So, I definitely turn to this image for as a resource.
Right. And it's actually a very good image because it's very indicative of what each way is. You think
Hmm.
about it, look at number 2. It's that feedback.
Yep.
It's going right back to the beginning, and then of course the constant learning and the teachable moments, and continuous, it's continuous. You're always learning. And I
Yep.
that is the part that I'm looking forward to most. But we're here, and this part 4 has, like I said, a bunch of chapters, and I'm just going to take the intro here for a second.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what is feedback? And it's like we're shortening and amplifying feedback loops to see problems as they happen and then notify everybody in the value stream. So that everyone is aware of anything that's happening down the pipeline, and that feedback comes back and it feeds into everyone else to
Mm-hmm.
know what's going on. And telemetry is a form of feedback. It is the transparent ability to collect and analyze metrics and to monitor system performance, identify issues. Um, it is a huge part of keeping your systems going. Like you
Yeah.
have all this data and not make sense of it. And monitoring and setting telemetry on the right things. And this whole section is chock full of great ideas. So this first chapter is about telemetry, but this part, it kind of takes you on this little journey about creating telemetry,
Mm-hmm.
able and and solving your problems and using it to better anticipate problems and integrating user research and feedback. That's the feedback. Those are all forms of feedback into the product teams, enabling feedback so dev and ops can safely perform their deployments in concert with one another. You need that level of feedback
Mm-hmm.
and enabling feedback to increase the quality of work for via peer reviews or peer pair programming. That is also a huge form of feedback. And the latter is definitely instant feedback. There's nothing like
Yeah.
peer programming where it's like, mm-mm.
Yes.
Leaning over your
Yeah.
shoulder and going, what are you doing?
Exactly. And that was the point. I mean, since we're talking about it now, I was going to get to it later, but do you have any experience with pair programming, and like what's been your sort of you know
Yes.
just experience with that?
So when I was in this DevOps boot camp at University of Penn, it was a 6-month intensive full stack coding boot camp. Shout out to my cohort. It was so intense where we would be working on a project, group projects. Everybody hates them, but I had great group members, and we would get on a call and watch each other code. Just to, like, if you missed a session or you needed help with something, or someone vice versa. That's the most recent experience.
Mm.
Now it goes back. I guess you can say pair programming can also be, because I'm not a programmer, it can be, writing scripts with someone on a Zoom call. You're trying to
Mm.
deploy OpenShift. It takes different forms, but the key word here is pair, and you're
Mhm.
never going at it alone. I don't do it because that's really not part of my job anymore, but have found the value in it, and I understand just how quickly that is probably one of the quickest forms of feedback.
Mhm.
So yes. How about you? Have you done it in your career?
I have, and it's been, I don't know, I would say kind of a mixed bag. And maybe it's just me at the beginning not really knowing the benefits of it, because I
Fair.
felt like if I was working with somebody pair programming and I was the driver and they were the commenter, like I have my own sort of split brain thought to like, oh, I want to try XYZ, but I'm waiting for their input, and maybe I don't want to wait. I just want to go ahead and try. And it wasn't very productive in that sense, because I'm like, oh, let me try this. They're like, well, what are you doing? We were working. Well, I'm like, oh, I think I could, So I had to take a step back and be like, no, we're a team. I can't be a rogue and just go off and do my own thing. So I kind of had to settle myself, right? So that was the first experience. Second experience was different. It was better, I think, for everybody that was involved. I was actually mentoring a young woman who had joined an SRE team, and she was driving and I was giving the direction, right? But it was
Hmm.
more like she was asking me questions. It was like kind of like the direct feedback that you were talking about.
Hmm.
She had developed a solution and had asked me to review it for feedback. And so I had already looked at the code, on my own, but then we're working together to make these improvements. Because on the one hand, I mean, and they talk about pull requests in this chapter. We can get to that. I could make a pull request and offer my changes there, but there's something about that interactivity when we sit down together and I'm like, well, I'm not going to make these changes. I'm going to walk you through the changes that I think that you should make and let you know why I think these changes should be put in place. And so it was good for her because she kind of got to see. I mean, I don't want to blow my head up, but I was the more senior person in the role, and she
Mhm.
was the junior person in the role, and I was offering advice from a perspective like of having seen a solution like this and improvements
Yeah,
that could be made. So
fair.
yeah,
Well, that is a form of feedback. It is mentioned in this chapter, and it's kicking off chapter 14,
yeah.
creating telemetry to enable seeing and solving problems.
Yes, and I had a couple notes about this one. I appreciated, I think it was Etsy, where they were talking about they track all the things, like every single thing. If it is a metric for
Yes.
for tracking, they tracked it, and so I appreciate that because everybody has different things, different signals they want to look at. Developers, operators, users, QA, security,
Hmm.
whoever. So track it for everybody, and then when it's relevant, when it's important, you can pull that information up and look at it. And I guess the one comment that I would have about that, though, for whoever's listening or watching, and they're like, oh man, I got to track everything, to not get overloaded with all these metrics that you're tracking, because it
Yeah.
might be, you might be tracking something and it stays the same all the time. Like, um, say you've got 3 servers in a cluster, and you're tracking like how many servers are healthy in this cluster, and it's always three, like forever. It's like, well, yeah, you could track that, but how important is that metric to
How
your
useful is it?
to your
How
application?
what
Yeah.
what so telemetry is not just like you said. Etsy started with 200,000. They went up to 800,000 different metric
Mhm.
points, and they had TV screens around the office. That is a
Mhm.
level of transparency and visibility that really makes everyone more accountable, right?
Mhm.
If telemetry, all the things, it makes people more accountable. And something like that, you really need an environment that, and I've used this word before, that is really safe, where
Mm.
there's this level of trust that there's no blame game. It's probably like a continuum where, Etsy was very small at one time, and, maybe there wasn't it's like, I hate using this word all the time, but this level of safety where,
Mhm.
you don't want to make a mistake. No, you push first. No, I'm
Yeah.
not pushing first. I don't want to be the one that brings down production, right? And
Yep.
then over time, teams tend to, and organizations tend to, build that trust. And as 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 mm, DevOps is a culture, so is trust. Building that, it's not something you can buy. It's something that you have to build inside of your
Mhm.
organization. And to get to that level where you're comfortable putting your work up on a screen so
Yes.
everybody can see, the metrics that you're tracking for your slice of the world, you have to be pretty comfortable in that, and in yourself, that I've done the right things, and if I haven't, it'll be all hands on deck to
Yep.
try to remedy and remediate such issues. So yeah, stuff goes wrong even in
Yeah.
the best situations.
Indeed, and what I appreciate about having these, metrics or data points to fall back on, it's it. I think it offers more safety to that point of
Mhm.
being blameless, because it's like, okay, what happened? What caused the failure? Well, let's go back and look at the metrics. Let's see what
Let's
happened.
go to the tape.
Yeah, exactly. Well, this service was overloaded and that caused the queue to get backed up or something like that. Well,
Mhm.
okay, now you can almost get into like a five why scenario. Like, well, why was the service backed up? And then you can kind of just take a step back until you find
Yes.
the root cause. You're not pointing at a
Nope.
person. You're letting the data, the metrics, the telemetry guide you to the problem.
You're
Um,
right.
so
So in a
yeah.
lot of in postmortems in my previous life, there would be a lot of the whys. And
Mhm.
again, you don't want to feel like, oh my God, they're coming for me. No, like being able to answer those questions with the data, with your institutional knowledge, and understand. Like sometimes you think about it, when you're pair programming or doing a peer review, people are asking you questions, and those questions can elicit oh yes, those light bulb moments. So
Mhm.
it is not a bad thing to have that level of conversation to get to the ultimate why.
Hmm.
And this is telemetry helps with that. It doesn't prevent issues,
Yeah,
but it
yeah,
darn sure gives you visibility into them. I think the Etsy case study was talking about Etsy is like the religion there is it's the church of graphs.
yeah,
Like they see all the things. I thought that was so funny because
yeah,
how else do they stay successful in that, right? Because they're going to track
yeah.
everything that is necessary to be tracked.
Yes, yeah,
I like it.
the key metrics. And then the last point I'll make about chapter four is that metrics for business operation and
Hmm.
how the case study with LinkedIn and how they told one of their vendors about issues with their system because they were tracking the results of how it impacted stuff inside LinkedIn. So it's
Right.
like, they had the visibility to say, well, you know what, this is a problem, so we got to let them know so that they could
Hmm.
fix it so it doesn't affect us.
I saw
Um,
that.
that's
I remembered that one.
yeah,
And look at you being the hero of the day.
right.
Excuse me, sir. There's a problem with your system.
Yeah,
Maybe
yeah,
you should work on your telemetry.
exactly. 'Cause the last thing that you want is your customers telling you
You do
that you
not.
have a problem with your system based on the data that they got.
You do not.
You know what I'm saying?
But it's still funny. It's still funny. Nonetheless, it's still funny.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't have anything more about chapter 14. I mean, I do, but we could be here all day and we won't.
yeah, no doubt. We can move on to chapter 15,
Yes.
analyzing telemetry. We kind of hit some of these points as well, as far as like looking for the signals that make sense. You could track everything, but really pull the data that makes sense to the problem that you're trying to solve or the thing that you're trying to surface. If you're trying to debug a memory problem, you don't probably have to pull the CPU. It's
Exactly.
like let's look at memory and see what's going on there, see what's going on around those things as well. And also, the other point is alert fatigue.
I That word was I was waiting for you to finish
Yes,
because I was gonna like that's real too.
I will hand it off to you. I know I have several alert fatigue stories, but if you are ready to go, I'll hand it off to you while I sort through the ones that I want to share.
There is one in particular. It had to be, I don't know, years ago, over 10 years ago, where we were implementing a monitoring system. And the the sheer level of noise to get down to something that you could actually use. And the product was, again, it was a really long time ago. The product was good, but the tuning was a beast. And we were the fatigue just trying to get the most important stuff, understanding what it could and couldn't do. And it was just like that was just that one instance. Now, of course, over time you tune your product and it gives you the information that you need the most. But during that time, it was just like, I don't want to look at this.
Mhm.
And I don't know if you've noticed my Twitter background, there's a television on the wall behind me.
I will
I
have to look.
just I just remembered that. So I had I had the thing behind me that if you walked into the office, that's the first thing you saw. So we had that level of transparency in our small little team back at this college I worked at, and it was very helpful to kind of come in the morning and go, all right, let's keep going. Let's keep going, ladies and gentlemen. So, um, yeah, so analyze telemetry to better anticipate problems and achieve your goals. I'm going to tell you that was my story about fatigue. There's one more, and it's not necessary. But did you know what Gaussian distribution was?
I did. Yes.
I
And,
Again, another term I've never heard of. What is
and well, they mentioned fast Fourier transforms and Gaussian distributions. I have I don't know if you call it a privilege, but the honor of knowing this. I started out college as a electrical engineer, And after I learned that physics was a requirement for double E's to graduate at the Iowa State University of Science and Technology, I was like, this is not for me. I want to go, I want to be a little bit closer to the metal. So, I mean, long story short, I left electrical engineering and went to computer engineering.
Okay.
So that kind of solved that problem. Meanwhile, I did have to take double E 201, and there was a follow on course for that where we did fast Fourier transforms and did Gaussian distribution for signal processing.
Mm-hmm.
So I came across these terms and these techniques during that course or those courses.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
Not to say that I have applied them.
No, but you've heard this term
Yes,
before.
but I heard the term. Yeah.
Okay, well, you got me on that one. And
Uh,
thanks for sharing that little that you. I didn't know you went to the Iowa State. I did
yes.
not know that.
Yeah. Yeah. Indeed. I go clones. No doubt. But I did have an alert fatigue story.
Oh,
I was working for a media company that had developers in London.
mhm.
I was based here in Southern California. They were in London, and I was operating some old ass servers. These things were they were bootleg, right? Um, I want to say it was some early version of WebLogic or some sort of Java container runtime like that. And every morning, just about when I was on call, every morning their time, London time, they were calling me on the phone to say, "Hey, sir, Mr. Jenkins, the servers are down. You know, we cannot get to them." And I'm like, well, no, the servers were up. The sites that they were running were down.
Okay.
So I'm like, oh man, that's not good. We had no monitoring. We had nothing going on.
You said
Oh
no, that's not good.
yeah. So I'm like, and sure enough, and I think they explained this in the book several times, when these alerts occur at early hours in the morning, that's when stuff starts to get fixed quickly, right? So I did develop a system to monitor the site so we can, because I'm looking at the servers. I'm like, the servers are up.
Right.
The
Ops.
process is running.
The
Yeah,
system's up. What?
this is golden, you know? So I'm like, well, no, we actually need to check the site because that's the important signal.
Mm-hmm.
That's the telemetry that the business side that they need. Can they actually get to the site on the servers that are up and running, you know, so they can do what they need to do? So I had to get a process in place to monitor the site, and basically based on whether the site was up or down, I this was like way further down, set up a process to reboot the service that needed to get the site back up. So then everything's self-contained. It's like I don't have to do anything. So
Mm-hmm.
the calls dropped off, and I was like, yes, alert fatigue solved, alert
It is
fatigue
real.
minimized. Yeah,
Now you said the magic word. You said reboot.
yeah.
And there is a whole spiel in I can't remember which chapter it
I think
is.
it was earlier on. I think it was chapter 14, where it's like reboot or blame or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. And it's you want the high performing team to be able to use the telemetry to diagnose, detect, and troubleshoot and solve problems without resorting to a reboot. And that
Mhm.
comes with the good telemetry, having the monitoring systems that provide the type of insight for you to go in and see what your problems are and pinpoint it. Some systems just need a good kick in the pants, but
Mhm.
in this instance, they were saying only low performing teams would just resort to a reboot. They would use their telemetry and their tooling and to like I said, diagnose and
Yeah,
detect and remediate the problem. So yeah, those were the good old days, but now
yeah.
it's more like, it's not a whole server that's your problem usually. It's a service, it's a
Mhm.
container, it's something else, it's a VM. Um, but yeah, that was pretty interesting. What
Yeah, yeah, indeed.
there was an are we going to talk about more case study because they're everywhere, but
They are chock full of case studies.
a lot of case
I'm
study.
trying to see if I had any other notes specifically to case studies. Not from chapter 15, which I think we were currently on. We talked about Netflix. Um,
Yeah,
no, but we can
they
go
talked about Netflix
into,
twice in chapter 15. Go
yep.
figure.
We talked about statistical techniques like using fast Fourier
Yes.
transforms, Gaussian distribution to look for those true spikes in the data. Um, And then, well, can we jump forward to chapter 16,
I'd love
feedback
to.
for deploying code?
Yes,
Um, and because I again had another life experience
of
that
course.
kind of called to me from this chapter, and I'm just reading from my notes here that developers are afraid to deploy code. Operators are too on occasion, but it
Hmm.
reminded me of a system that we had in place for a team that I was with, where the developers could deploy the code anytime they wanted to, but they would still put in tickets for us to deploy the code. So finally, we had to put our foot down and say, hey, we are not deploying your code for you. You can deploy the code. Just let us know if there's a problem. If you open a ticket, we'll probably close it. And just be like, yeah, okay, you're going to deploy. That's great. Go ahead and do it. And we would, if it was an important deployment, we will be all hands on deck. But we
Hmm.
wanted the developers to know that yes, you have the power, you have the opportunity and yay the responsibility
Yeah.
to deploy your own code, and we will be there to support you every step of the way while you operate it. So yeah, don't be afraid to deploy the code. If you have
Yes.
your systems set up and in place to observe and check everything, if you got your CI pipeline in place, you're running tests beforehand, just go ahead and deploy the code. Let's see what
Yeah.
happens.
And in the event that something does go wrong, that is the opportunity to future proof your systems,
Yeah,
understanding whatever this issue was. How do you remediate it? Maybe with better testing, maybe with whatever, and give. It's that, again, that's that teachable moment. It's that feedback. You found
the
something that
feedback.
to be wrong. This feedback, let's figure out what it is. Oh, this is what happened. Again, all hands on deck. People, it's not just your responsibility. It's your maybe your feature or whatever, but your team is there to kind of help you move this along. And more than two eyes are better than two. So
Hmm.
having more eyes on a problem, helping figure out exactly what the root cause is, and figuring out ways to make sure it doesn't happen again, definitely, like, it's the way that it should be. So another teachable moment. Feedback, feedback, feedback. And don't, like you said, you think about it, they had the ability to deploy their code and they didn't,
Hmm.
right? And what does that tell you? That tells you that they didn't want the blood on their hands just in
Mm.
case something goes wrong. And it's the same thing, that same analogy was used for ops. Like, we don't want to do anything. Don't do anything on Fridays. That
Right.
is still the mantra. If you're
I,
listening to this, don't
I
be that
still allow it. Yeah.
gal. You do?
No, I'm saying I will allow that rule. Don't
Oh,
apply
okay.
on Friday.
No,
Yeah,
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 we're not doing that. We're
yeah,
not
yeah,
doing that.
yeah,
Because things can happen, please don't make them happen on my way to happy hour. Like, I don't need that in my life, and nor do your colleagues. So,
yeah,
be kind and don't deploy anything on Friday.
yeah,
And I'm sure there are people going to hear this and listen to this and say, "Oh, we deploy 1,200 times a day." So what? You're better than me.
yeah.
You're better
No
than me.
doubt. No
Um,
doubt.
yeah, let use I'm on the page in the book and I'm looking down. It says use telemetry to make deployment safer.
Yep.
Yes, it's probably safe where you live, but no, I don't want you
Not
doing
on
it.
Fridays. Save the
Not on
weekend.
Friday.
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
But to that point though, the other mantra that they used throughout this chapter, or at least a few points in this chapter, was that small frequent changes are the best kinds of
Yes.
changes. Because if
Yes.
you come in with this pull request that's 1,000 lines long across 50 files, more than
Mm-mm.
likely, well, and I guess the conclusion that I came to, if you offer this pull request covering hundreds of lines of code across multiple files, if somebody looks at it, they're going to look at the test like, okay, did it lint correctly? Did it compile? Okay, the container was built or whatever, okay, the artifact was produced. Looks good to me. Boom, and they stamp it, right? But
Exactly.
that looks good to me is not, it's not thorough. It doesn't give the
Mm-mm.
opportunity for somebody to take a good look at all of the changes that you made across this code. So if you make a change 20 lines across one file, somebody might actually look at all the changes that you made and say, you know what, this doesn't make sense to me. We need this. This is a feature and it works. Or they might kick it back and say like, "Oh, I think we need to improve this." But at least they gave you feedback directly on the
Yes.
change that was made, as opposed to like, "Oh yeah, looks good to me. Let's push it." You know.
And what you just said reminded me of something that we read in the chapters. I don't know which one it is, but there's this tweet from 2013 where this guy says, ask a programmer to review 10 lines of code.
Hmm.
He'll find 10 issues. Ask him to do 500 lines of code and he'll say it looks good.
Right.
And I laughed at that so hard. And there was another instance where someone put in this really huge pull request, and the senior engineer or whatever was like, please don't do that again. Like,
Hmm.
if you like me, don't make me
Yeah.
do. So it's smaller bodies of work, less code. Yes, and to your point, that is a form of fatigue. If someone's
Mm.
pulling in these pull requests where you gotta do an all-nighter, and like,
Yeah.
don't you love your coworkers. Don't do them like that.
Yeah.
And that's, and when we talk about the modularity and smaller deployments, and make smaller changes, that's not just for you, just you can get a feature in quick and fast. That's for the stability of the architecture of the service. That is for the people who have to do the code reviews, the people who, if it's
Hmm.
a change review board. Don't get me started on change review boards. We don't do those
Okay.
anymore. But yeah, like, this is, if we're doing 2 week sprints and you pushed out a whole, you might need to break that up, because
Yeah.
again, it's not the most feasible way to deploy, because more things can happen the bigger the set of code is, and the person who has to review it is not going to like you.
Yeah. Yeah. No doubt. And then it's like you're also possibly slowing down other developers.
Exactly.
Because if you are on a large team that's operating at scale, multiple changes to a main trunk of some project
Yes,
or whatever, then now they have to pull in their changes, or you have to pull in their changes, because you don't want to overwrite something that somebody else has already deployed if you
exactly.
didn't pull their stuff in. And now that just kind of like increases the toil
It
for everybody
snowballs.
across the team. Yeah, that's no good at all.
It absolutely snowballs. There was a section called Dev shares pager rotation duties with ops.
I
And
love
I
it.
and I kikied, like,
Hmm. Yes, gotta love
because
it.
I would I would absolutely love um if the developers were like, when I was back in on the ops team, I'd love it, because that
Yeah,
means instead of the rotation going over the same small number of people, that pool would get bigger, and our trip back around the sun wouldn't come so fast, and
yep,
it would make the developers much more aware,
yes,
and they would probably be more diligent with how they're writing their code, or what type of metrics they're pulling, or what type of tests they're writing. It makes them more aware. So I that's that every 2 a.m. thing. Yes,
hmm
we want
yeah.
everyone to suffer with us.
Or just sleep through the night because everything is running so
I'd
smoothly.
love that. The latter sounds better. That's the
Yeah, yeah, and I guess the two comments that I have on that, I did have the opportunity to work on a team where it was just two of us on the team,
Mhm.
SRE, and then we both want to take vacation at the same time. It's like, well, who's going to carry the pager? Who's going to take the call? And one of the developers said, "Hey guys, I'm familiar with this application because number one, I helped write it or whatever, so I'm willing to take the pager to, let you guys go on
Oh,
vacation." So I'm like, you know what, sir, bless you, thank you so much for that
teamwork makes
opportunity.
the dream work. That's what they
Yeah,
say.
indeed. And then also the case study with Google where they have handoff readiness. Now, Google,
Yes.
they have the mantra of you build it, you operate it. And they do have a very large SRE organization, but
But you don't
they're
get one.
exactly, you're in the position where we're not going to operate your service team, whoever, unless it has this level of stability.
Yeah.
And if you
Yeah.
give it to us and it no longer maintains that stamp of approval for stability, guess what? You're getting it back, and you can operate it yourself until it's ready for us to take it again. I was like, I love that. Now, everybody doesn't operate at Google scale, so
No,
maybe you don't have that
that's
opportunity.
a scale opportunity. But
Yeah, but I do like that idea.
you putting your what is that? You have your skin in the game, as they
Yes.
say. You're putting your money, you're putting your code where your mouth is. Oh, I think it's great. I think it's good. I think it's great enough. Um, but yeah, it really makes who's writing the code much more accountable for its activities at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, indeed.
Yeah. So what do we have next? Oh,
The o
you
Yeah,
know,
we're this
we've been doing this over 30 minutes. Hold
yeah,
on. What are we
we're
doing here? We are digging in to this part 4.
yes, we're going deep. And
Woo!
I only had one more. I mean, a couple more points over the last, like chapter 17 and chapter 18, where we're talking
Okay.
about A/B testing, um, and experimentation. And the one thing that kind of caught out to me was how every deployment is an experiment, and every feature is an opportunity for A/B testing. Because I mean, from the product side, and God bless people that are product managers that know what the customer wants and how we can bring it to them in a product or service. But even if we, build it and say they will come, that's not always the case, right? So we have to take these deployments as like, hey, here's an opportunity for us to see, like, we're going to put this feature out here. Does it work for our customer? Does it work for whoever we're supporting? And if it doesn't, well, okay, what can we do different? How can we change that?
Mm.
So I thought that that was kind of an interesting point that they called out there.
Intuit, the company that owns all the
All the financial stuff.
yeah, all the financial stuff, that was one of the companies where they
Uh-huh.
were talking about, we would usually put in this change freeze, like where you couldn't do anything. But that's the best time to do it. Like that's how we
Hmm.
make sure that these features that we're putting out here works, that there's something that our customer wants. We're getting that really good feedback to make improvements. So yes, peak filing season. Yes, we're going to be pushing good stuff in there. There will not be a change freeze, which most organizations still to this day they will
Yeah.
do. If there's this big uh you know PI that's coming up that they don't, that's fine for them. But Intuit said, nah, this is the
Hmm.
best time to experiment. And
Yeah.
I was intrigued by that because that's not the norm. But to get to that level of comfort um with your builds and deployments, that's impressive.
Yeah. 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 It
That's
definitely is.
impressive.
Yeah, and I think it was like their business point was if we don't try these things now
We
during
won't have
tax season, then
Yeah,
we're going to have to wait a whole another year to see if people actually want these features or need these features.
exactly.
So yes, this is the prime time. We're not going to freeze. We're going to deploy. We're going to test. We're going to experiment. So yeah, that was definitely a brave and wise thing for them to do at that time.
Kudos. Yeah, what else we got here?
I think that's just about all the notes that I've had. We've kind of
Okay.
gone over pair programming, which comes up in chapter 18, change review.
Yep.
They talked about the Git flow process. The one comment that I had about the Git flow is like, yeah, I don't like working on long-lived feature branches. Give me a very short-lived feature. Let's work on this for a couple weeks and let's merge this thing in or delete it. Like, what are we really doing
I
here?
feel you. I feel you on that.
You know? Yeah. So
So,
that,
I think that's it. I mean, of course,
yeah.
this was talking about change control and you know uh having change control teams and or change control boards, and make having people who are too far away from the code being responsible. And there was a case study about a VP sitting there
Hmm.
looking and going, "What am I doing here?"
Yeah.
But something really bad happened. And I can't remember this particular case study. I don't have a sticky note for it. And that's what precipitated that level of like heavy-handedness. And they
Hmm.
realized just how ineffective it was. Stuff wasn't getting done.
Yeah.
And then you have to just go back to the drawing board and come up with ways, the fewer people, fewer eyes on it, or add that +1 or +2, doing those those code reviews, and doing
Mhm.
more peer programming. Um, Organizations are finding ways to be responsible enough to approve their own code into development, into
Yes.
production, and not be uncomfortable or have to wait. Like they have this level of trust in their teams
Yeah.
that it's your code, push it. Like
Yeah.
we built up the environment such that you have this leeway, and we trust. And if things go wrong, we have ways to remedy and things like that. So
Yeah.
yeah, chapter 18 was very good. I like the case studies. The one about Adidas was really good, where they
Yeah.
had,
Yeah. That was interesting.
I think that was the VP one. But
Yeah.
yeah, the 3 VPs to approve, and putting changes in Excel spreadsheets, and yeah, let's get
Yeah.
beyond that.
Yeah. We can do better.
Yes. So this was it. This was a great chapter.
Yeah. I enjoyed getting through this one.
Yes, yes. And I hope we got a couple of people that are listening, and hey, who's listening? We would
Yeah.
love to feel free to hit us up in the chat. Let us know you're there, where you're from, and yeah, join us next week for
Yeah.
part 5.
Indeed. Part 5. Like you said earlier, we are flying through
We're
this
flying through
this book. And this is, again, I have to go back to my document, but we are finally to the last way, the third way, technical processes of continual learning and
Yes.
experimentation. So yeah, wrapping up the 3 ways next week. So, and let's see who's joining us.
Jepson.
We got Jepson from Miami. Thank you so
Yes.
much for joining us from YouTube. We really
Thank
appreciate you
you.
joining us here on the live stream. And yeah, all the folks on the playback, the replay
Yes.
on YouTube, LinkedIn. If you're on your podcast device listening to this, thanks for catching us there too. We also had a call out. I mean, of course, next time is the third way, part 5. But as we realize we're getting close to the end
Yes.
of this book, we've
Yes.
only got 2 more parts. I think there's part 5, the
Part
third way is
5
next,
and part
part
6.
6, and we're going to wrap it up with part 6. So we're looking for what to read for the next season.
So put your thinking caps on.
Yeah, reach out to us on LinkedIn, Twitter, wherever you want to get a hold of us,
Yes.
and let us know what you're reading, what you might want to read with someone, and to have our thoughts or input on it. And one thing you mentioned, Angela, was we're from cover to code, right? So we got to get to some code. Yeah.
Cover the code. You see
Yeah,
it?
no
It's
doubt,
right
no
there.
doubt. Logos and all. And I mean, not to get back into a review of this book, because we're wrapping the review, we're concluding this episode. But I appreciate that they are not prescriptive per se in the tools. They're
Yes.
more prescriptive, they're more not even prescriptive, but suggestive of processes and ways that you can implement these ways, the first, second, third way. But let's get to some code. Let's
do it.
show some. I mean, I'm ready to do some screen shares.
Wait a
And
minute. So I have a poop ton of books over here.
I
Like,
know
I don't,
you got. Do you work for O'Reilly? I mean, like, who do you know at O'Reilly that's sending you these books?
I know a few people. I know some folks. So let's see. There's Python, there's Java, there's Python for DevOps, there's SQL, there's Docker, there's Podman, there's Kubernetes. I don't care what it is. We
Yeah.
want to know what you want to read. Technical
Indeed.
book for next season.
Yeah,
So hit us up.
And we will take it from the cover to the code. Yes, indeed.
From the cover to the code, baby. All right. Well, thanks for listening. I enjoyed talking to you. I do. This is
it's
high
great catching
time of
up.
my week.
Right.
Yeah.
No doubt, no doubt, no doubt. And likewise, enjoy chopping it up with you, Angela, and all the folks online as well.
Yes.
Thanks for joining
Thanks
us.
for listening.
And I'll be looking forward to catching you next week.
Next week. Take care, everybody.
We'll see you.
Bye.